Good afternoon. We are in the home of Professor Giacomo Becattini in Florence, Italy. He doesn't need an introduction. He has been the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Competitiveness Institute given to him 2 years ago. And I would like to thank Professor Becattini for his kindness of opening us the possibility to interview him in his home. If you allow me, I would like to divide your part in 3 parts. First, talking about the differences and similarities between the concepts of district and cluster, following a little bit the line that was developed in your intervention in the Glasgow conference of TCI in the year 2000. The second, on the maturity of the concept and the acceptance in the world of economic policy. And the third one on some of the challenges on local development that have been pointed out by you in your latest speech in the opening of the Artemino conference. Could you explain us the difference in the origins of the district and the cluster concepts?
Well, there is a certain difference in the sense that while the concept of district was, shall we say, born as a local society that specializes in a certain type of production, the cluster concept was born as a territorial concentration of a certain kind of activity. This, shall we say, is the basic difference. In one case, we see the transformations of a local society. In the other case, we see a spatial distribution of companies producing correlated goods.
Well, you were telling me that one of these concepts is more sociological and the other more economic?
Yes. One belongs to the sphere of social economics, or one could also say economic sociology. The other belongs more classically to economics, in particular the theory of localization.
In Glasgow, you have pointed out the different accents between cooperation and competition of these 2 different concepts.
Yes, of course. There is always a mix of cooperation and competition, always. But in the case of the district, enterprises are embedded in local society, whereas in the case of clusters, they are more hosted by local society, inasmuch as they can also leave and go away. Whereas for District 2, it's possible, but it's more difficult because they are more rooted in local society.
Are there any other differences that you would like to point out?
Well, yes, there are differences. The fundamental difference lies in the fact that, as I have said, the district is a society that specializes, and therefore the productive infrastructure of the district serves the community. In the other case, we have the forming of a productive infrastructure and around it a community to serve it.
Aren't these almost symmetrical concepts?
Symmetrical. Yes, they are symmetrical.
In practice, for the practitioner that is listening to us, should they take into account any other differences?
Well, the only difference that I can see, the main difference that I can see, is that if the practitioner is a public operator, a local administration, we can say that they will be more at ease with the concept of an industrial district. And if it's an entrepreneur, he will be better off. It'll be more natural for him with the concept of a cluster. But there isn't a major difference.
In the 70s, when you have started to develop this concept of industrial district as a unit for analysis and for development policy, you were isolated with respect to the mainstream of the economists. Today we are in a conference with more than 400 persons coming from more than 40 different countries that all work with this unit. This concept is already accepted by many countries and institutions worldwide. Do you think that we are becoming mainstream?
Well, I'm not sure what your intentions are in saying that, because being mainstream is a success, but also not a success. It depends. That being said, I'm pleased to see an approach spreading that I consider to be useful for economic development policies, above all in the developing countries, but also in the others. And in any case, I'm grateful to the Institute of Competitiveness for what it is doing to spread this approach.
The European Union is launching many projects to reinforce the local development, many based in clusters. Among others, there is a mapping of European clusters in all the European regions. There is a prize for the best cluster entrepreneur of this year, and many others. But still, we are still marginal in the European policy. What do we need? What is it missing to become a real, solid and robust alternative to the traditional industrial policy, for example, in research?
You know, firstly, I would note that new approaches always take a long time to penetrate the minds of scholars, to assert themselves. John Maynard Keynes used to say that it took 30 years, maybe even more. However, if we continue with in-depth studies in the field of concrete cases, and if we perfect econometric studies on the existence and the complexity of the district effect, the positive district effect, if this happens, then I believe advances will indeed be made.
And what about in the policy?
Well, policy is the most sensitive point because it's the ultimate goal of the changes. And, well, let's say that no one better than you is able to understand in as much as you come from the only country, that is Spain, that has introduced in its industrial policy a particular attention given to territorial phenomena. In Italy, there have been various attempts. The great economist Paolo Silos Lobini had succeeded in getting the National Council for the Economy and Labour to draw up a draft law for a policy for districts, but now with Silos gone and the change in Parliament, we don't really know what the situation is now. So we're waiting for clarifications on this point, which for the moment we cannot see.
Still, therefore, the monitoring is still not possible or necessary.
Well, no. There is little to monitor because there isn't as yet any policy. Or at least there isn't any stated policy.
There has been a lot of talk about the challenges that districts are at this moment facing. In the latest speech in Artimino this year, you were proposing in your own words that every local society needs to identify the system of strengths, productive and technical and socio-cultural, that can define the range of possible developments. Could you expand this concept, please?
Yes, I'll explain. There is a tendency for every local society to set itself exceedingly ambitious objectives, which are, however, out of the reach what it is possible to attain. So my call is intended to invite local societies to analyze well their own production model in order to understand which are, to identify the range of effective possibilities of development, so as not to give rise to needless, frustrating aspirations. Hence, the rule, both for individuals and for local societies, is expressed in the Latin proverb nocete ipsum, that is, know yourself. If you don't know yourself, all your plans are built on sand.
You also mention, or you also point out, that it's important that every one of these choices of development fits with the local acceptance in the district.
Yes, this is a very serious problem for the district, because one of the reasons of its effectiveness lies in the fact that the population in its various conditions essentially takes ownership of a lifestyle, both in work and in the personal sphere, and that is produced in the environment. But because there is a need to respond to changes in culture and economy, that come from outside the district. This may also involve changes in the lifestyle. Now, it's important to see if these changes are accepted, because if they're not accepted, there is a breakdown of the balance between economic forces and social cultural forces in the district. This is an extremely sensitive issue, because there is no science today that is studying this issue. Because it would be social psychology as applied to local systems. This would be the science.
And what will be the implication for the responsibles of development policy on the coordination between the policies of local development and the policies of value chain or filiera that you also pointed out?
Yes. The problem is very complex because, shall we say, the national economic system, at least as I understand it, is a set of productive value chains distributed throughout the territory, and alternatively, many local societies having various value chains or pieces or parts of value chains that are productive. Whoever has the responsibility of central government must therefore take into account both the requirements of those value chains, the logic of those value chains, the technical and structural interdependencies, and the requirements and the possibilities of local societies that are most important for production. There isn't just a fiat problem or a telecom problem. There is also a Prato problem, a Vicenza problem, and there is a need. There's a need to set up a policy that associates the territorial dimension with the technical production dimension.
And just to close, Professor, what is the message you would like to transmit to all the practitioners on the local development across the world that will be listening to us through this conference and in the future through the Competitiveness Institute?
Well, thank you very much for this question, because indeed I have a message to convey, and that message is the same as Marshall's when he defines political economy and economics as the science of wealth, but even more as a part of the concern for man, the science of man, the thinking about man, because this tells us that, in a certain sense, we are to refute what I would say economistic alienation. We must get back to the roots. The economy serves man, must serve man. And in reference to our themes, This places, in a more correct philosophical light, the concept of the district versus the concept of cluster, because the notion of cluster is born within a specific understanding that has less philosophical breadth to it. However, all this being said, the two approaches are going in the same direction, and for many more years, shall we say, the battle we have to wage against the mainstream is a common battle.
Living local and thinking and acting global.